Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the iGive webinar. We hope that everyone who is with us can hear us at this point. If you do not hear anything, please select a speaker from the drop-down box, and we'll sort of put a little thing here. So hopefully you're seeing me circle around that. If you do not hear anything, please select a speaker. As we are about to begin, this webinar will be recorded, and a link will be emailed to all participants, and it will also be posted on the iGive YouTube channel and at support.igive.com in the webinar archive. Just as a political announcement, the webinar archive is a great place to look for interesting things that have come out of the iGive team. So you can check there and see if there's any topics that you're interested in that we may have covered previously. We are going to mute all of our participants throughout tonight's webinar, but please, we do want you to ask questions. So if you see that little red arrow, it points to a section called questions. You can type our questions, and a member of our team will be monitoring those questions, and we will either answer them as they come up if they're particularly critical and relevant. Otherwise, we will answer them at the end during our Q&A section. Occasionally, the dashboard does disappear, so if it does, please click on that little orange button, follow the little arrow up, and it will extend your dashboard once again. So we're really glad to have you here tonight. And my name is Lena Scott, and I am part of the iGive team. I am joined here tonight by Rob Grosshanther, our founder of iGive, and probably most importantly and most excitingly for us, I am joined by Sherry QuamTaylor. And Sherry is a nonprofit executive, and she has extensive experience in working with not-for-profits and helping them to grow their businesses, because really a not-for-profit is just that, a business. And she is going to share with us tonight some of her tips and ideas for how to overcome a financial plateau for not-for-profit organizations. And so on that note, I'm going to just pass it over to Sherry.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Big thanks to the iGive team for having me here tonight. So tonight we're talking development, and we're talking fundraising. And I work with all sorts of organizations who honestly have grown to some certain level of success, but maybe they've hit some sort of financial plateau, and maybe their revenue is not coming in as easily as it once was in the past. So I often find that drive and energy and passion and vision that got you going and got you kind of in your initial groove, at some point it tapers off. And in my work with nonprofits, I've kind of realized there are a lot of commonalities. And so we're going to be talking through 5 that I've chosen. There's many of them, but these are some real big picture ones that we can go through tonight. And I think especially these are applicable to any size organization. So I know we have small organizations, medium-sized and large organizations that are really passionate about iGive and have been using that system. And so welcome to this webinar. So first of all, I'm going to talk through these 5, and I'm also going to give some pitfalls for each one, just to say, hey, are you watching that? And certain ones may resonate with you more than others, and hopefully you can have some strong takeaways from this evening. So the first one we're going to talk about is being reactive and not proactive. And some of these are going to sound a little bit like cliches, and yeah, we've heard that before, but I always, when I start working with people, I always say, okay, now this is really the time if your funding has plateaued or you're just kind of struggling through the growth of your organization. I always say, like, okay, let's get real. Like, are we going to do this for real? Maybe your organization has started and you've grown up to that, $200,000 or $300,000 in revenue mark, and there comes this time where, and I've been there with a nonprofit, where you are wearing so many hats, you have so many ideas coming at you. There might be your own ideas too if you're a real visionary leader. There comes a time when you really have to push the pause button and say, okay, this has been a really great energy and momentum that's gotten you to a certain point, but now it's actually time to run the business, like Lena had said. A nonprofit is a business, and there's a process that we need to go through. And oftentimes, EDs will say to me, this is a little harder than we thought, this funding thing. All of my maybe initial funders gave early on, and now, wow, we have some hard work to do here. I think this is really this real change in mindset of saying, I'm not going to be reactive anymore and just respond to everything that's hitting me or every idea that's hitting me, but I'm actually going to put a plan in place and proactively implement that plan. So number one, we've touched on, but we do have to remember we are running a business to support a mission or program. Your donors are businessmen and women, many of them. They want to be spoken to in that manner. They want to know that their gift is being used efficiently and effectively and being managed from a business person. So I always encourage everyone to remember that. Secondly, there's a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual rhythm of running a business. You know, daily, what tasks need to be done? Quarterly, what are our goals? Where are we high? Where are we low? Annually, of course, you know, as a nonprofit, there's a lot of annual tasks that we must do. But it's amazing how I think that oftentimes in fundraising and managing our nonprofits that we're so in the weeds because we're all wearing 10 hats, way too many hats, that it's hard to stay in that rhythm of accountability where you take the moment to reflect on, you know, did we have a good month or did we have a bad month? Why did we have a bad month this month? Or why did we have a good month? Where were we high? Where were we low?
You know, Sherry, I myself went through a seminar many years ago with Franklin Covey. Stephen Covey is one of like the top gurus as far as personal organization and time. And one of the things that I learned in that webinar, in that seminar, which I think is really applicable here, is that if you take just a few minutes every day to make a plan. So I'll sit down in the morning and I'll list all of the things that need to get done for that day, and then I'll rank them, A, B, and C. A, these are stuff that actually really, really have to get done today. B, these are things that if I could get to, they would be really great to get to today, but I probably need to get to them the next day or two. And C, these are things that are ideas that I have some time to get done. And it helps me to prioritize and realize that sometimes, you know, the C things, those are the most fun things to do. They might be the easiest, the low-hanging fruit, but really, I'm not going to be as productive. I'm going to be being reactive, not proactive, if I don't take those A things straight off the bat and just really focus on them. And similarly for your staff, like you say, your staff doesn't have a clear plan. If you don't know what those A, B, and C priorities are, it's really hard for you to direct your staff on what needs to get done now.
I agree. And I would also add that I will always say that the staff patterns and management really reflects that of a leader. So this is so important if you are a leader of a group or of an organization to really be setting a good example. Just tying into number 3, not only what Lena said of just being a good example to your staff, but your staff members have to know what metrics they are accountable to. They've got to have job descriptions that say, these are your roles and these are your metrics, whether they're monthly metrics, quarterly, annual, and they need to be held to those. Oftentimes I'll go into nonprofits and you know, it was a scurry to bring someone on because some funding came in, or there was a mission crisis, and they skipped right over the job descriptions. And so you've got to have a clear plan and metrics to be accountable with all your staff members. So here's where I'm just going to run through a couple pitfalls in this area, and I'm really flying over these high-level concepts. And so we look forward to your questions if there's anything we can drill down into even further. I will always say, don't be afraid to take 2 steps back and going 3 steps forward. There are things that are working, maybe worked last month in your organization that got you to a certain point that have worked fine, but they are not going to take you to the next level of funding. So it's scary to go 2 steps back. It's scary to say, well, it's kind of worked okay, but we probably should be doing it this way. Take the 2 steps back. It's going to hold you back from your financial growth. Number 2, you're going to need to carve out time in your day to be proactive. You've gotten used to being in panic mode or being in reactive mode. Start your day differently. Call your staff together for 8 minutes, whatever it is. Carve out time around your lunch hour to reflect on tasks that you have to do. Set in your calendar, 5th of the month is XYZ type of analysis. Get in the rhythm. Lastly is stop letting, I guess I'd say manage your organization. When you have decided to really own this and go forward, you are going to have to be that leader and be that driver and say, nope, that might be a good idea. We're going to put it over here in the parking lot. This is the plan today because we have these quarterly metrics to hit. You sometimes are going to have to be bad cop on this issue. Even though they might be great ideas, be strong enough to put them in the parking lot and come back to it. So the next concept is you need a plan. Of course you need a plan. This totally makes sense. But once you've really committed to saying, okay, we're going to scale this organization further, really where are we going? And I mostly ask this because a lot of times we have as leaders of organizations in our head where it's going. Well, we're gonna solve this XYZ crisis, or I'm going to revolutionize this area. But you have to be able to sit down and explain to a donor the impact, and really tangible impact that their gift is going to make on your organization. So share your plan for how you're going to execute this. So oftentimes, especially when it's a founding leader, I will say, perhaps your organization was created because there was some need that someone saw, and they may not have a business background, but they really saw a need, and they're really excellent at planning, I'll say, the programmatic side of the organization. How many people are they serving? Where are they serving? What are their solutions for rolling this out in other countries? You also need a plan of how you're going to grow the business. And so, again, you need to be able to sit down and explain what is your real need. So I've done just a really rudimentary diagram here just to say you've got to outline to a donor and say, here's the crisis we're solving, these are our plans, and here's how your gift can really make an impact in this area. They need to know what impact their funding is going to make. So I've just got a couple examples of kind of some external and internal examples that I've coached some clients through on presenting. You need to be able to sit down and present to a donor what you really need. Now this isn't, well, gosh, if we had, $300,000 this year, I think we could do this. It's a confident presentation to say, these are our programs, this is what it costs for us to run at full capacity, these are administrative costs, these are fundraising costs, and here's where your gift fits in.
Sherry, can I ask you a question? Because the screen you've got up here, it's talking about some pretty serious money. I mean, this organization wanted $1.1 million. Some of the causes that work with iGive, really, if they could get $30,000, they would be thrilled and that would meet their needs. So do you still have to do a budget like this?
I would really recommend it, Lena. Often I'm asked, well, what is a major donor, Sherry? And that answer is completely different for every organization. For this organization, $100,000 might be a major donor. For an organization that's $30,000, a $500 gift might be a major donor, or a $1,000 gift. You still have to show that donor, because you're always thinking retention, right? You're thinking next year's gift. You have to show them what impact that gift can make. And so it really doesn't matter the size of your organization. You want to be transparent. You want to exude transparency and show them how you're going to use their gift. Just one other exhibit. I want to encourage you to speak confidently to your donors. Tell them how your organization is growing. If you don't have such a healthy model of growth like this organization did, tell them why there might have been a dip. Well, we invested heavily in staff so that we could, in the next 2 years, grow our mission or duplicate in another facility. Tell the financial story of your organization. Tell them the allocation of funding. Tell them where your gifts are coming from. if I'm always presenting to an individual donor, I'll coach an ED or a development person to say, you know what, and for example, 49% of our gifts do come from individuals. That donor wants to know they're not alone in funding you. They want to know that they're not that first gift in, if you will. Okay, so those previous two examples were really external documents. That's sitting down with a donor and really having a healthy conversation with them, saying, here are our plans, here are our needs. Here are a couple internal tools, these next two, that I want to encourage the staff to be tracking and managing. Now, these tie back to the previous comment of you've got to know your metrics. You've got to live and breathe your numbers. If you aren't, start small. Now, I always hesitate putting a scary Excel spreadsheet on a screen like this, but I'm gonna make this real simple. So most of you probably have a profit and loss statement. You're in QuickBooks. There's some way you're keeping your budget. That's great. I am going to really suggest that in addition to all of your expenses, you know, everything, marketing, website, staff, travel, everything, take time to really forecast your revenue. This is an example of just a snapshot of a QuickBooks diagram. Here's our months. We've taken the time to say, okay, really, let's get serious. Where is our funding coming from, and what months do we need it to come in? Match up your highs and lows of funding historically with your program.
Sherry, is that a way to say, let's say you're an iGive cause and you're working with iGive and you know that certain months are really high, then you can go back and look and say, well, actually, we talked about it in our newsletter and that's how we got those numbers. So you're able to maybe tie why you've had an increase or maybe why you've had a decrease to your activity. Would this help you do that?
Absolutely. So that's a perfect example, Lana. If we said going into, for this example, 2016, our grassroots supporters, our people who really have that voice, who are active on social media, this might be a plan that's sitting right behind us saying, we're going to start slow. We're going to assume we're going to get, some smaller donations, but we have plans to grow this and to really, whoever that staff person is managing that, to hold them accountable to that, but also say, how are we going to be getting to $2,500 a month in November? How are we doing that? So these are those monthly meetings where we're sitting down and saying, okay, we said we were going to have a $20,000 gift from a foundation in April. What happened? Did it happen? It also, obviously there needs to be work done way prior to that gift being received. So it helps us with our pacing of activities as well. One other internal tool, of course, would be what I call a development dashboard. And so this would be just a diagram of maybe every month. I always encourage, after you've closed out the month with your accountant or in-house bookkeeper, have a one-pager where you're just sitting down for a half hour and saying, okay, how did we do in March? Okay, here are our segments of donors that we've identified. Here are the annual goals. How did we do? Well, we're trying to grow our mid-level donors. We have an annual goal of 45,000. We thought we would bring in 5,000 this month. We only brought in just a little over 1,900. Let's talk about that. Some areas you may not be too concerned. I always suggest, it's 4% of your overall giving. It might be tracking behind. And so we've also identified some metrics that the organization has identified as key indicators of success. And so this is a collaborative. It's not, holding hands to the fire, but it's really saying, hey, that's growing way faster than we thought. What are you doing that might be different from me over here, who's in charge of maybe monthly sponsorship? What are those different areas where you can really support each other and grow? So that that can be something that can really tie well to your donor development software as well, or your database software. Okay, pitfalls to avoid. Creating a planner budget based only on last year's performance. What is your real need? Don't base your budget next year on just 5% growth on the previous year. Tell me a story. If I'm a donor, tell me a story of why you need what you need. and set your and push towards it. Manage your staff towards that budget. That's how you will grow. That's that, again, that's being proactive and not reactive. Both of those, these first two kind of tie together. Establish your annual need really based on a mindset of growth. You know, if you're getting to that point where you really need to hire another staff person, put that person in the budget. Like, be brave and put them in the budget. You know, try to step away from that. Well, I can wear 16 hats still again this year. You're going to need to take off 10 and hand those off to another person. Put that person's salary in the budget and work toward it. We've only talked tracking and monitoring expenses. Please put your income into your QuickBooks account and segment it so you can have real numbers. And hold the staff accountable to both those expenses and income. You know, if we have budget issues, we've had a slow quarter, we immediately go to expenses, which is smart. I would never tell anyone not to do that. Also look at income and see where we're off and see where we can be tweaking slightly to make up that ground. Okay, number 3, you must spend money to make money. Sometimes I see that there's a bit of a fear of putting some of these things in the budget and saying, well, I think we need to just do, you know, the writing internally, or we need to do the website internally. And there are all great times and appropriate times to do that. And I encourage everyone to take advantage to those people who have come alongside them. I mean, we know that's how all of our organizations got off the ground. You know, that's what's so neat about nonprofit. But there comes a time where you have to look in the mirror and say, is now the time we should be investing in that? Is now the time we need to actually make that financial commitment to implement a donor database, to really move past that volunteer website into really a functional website that can really help people support us, whatever it is. So I've identified just a real high-level list of areas that I often see as far as, you know, always the donor database. When does it come a time to move from, for very small organizations, Excel spreadsheets and Constant Contact, which are great tools, but to something that's really robust that can help you analyze your metrics quickly, your giving, looking at your trends, and then tying your communications to that. Bookkeeping, copywriting, graphics, travel, specific honed-in collateral for your different donor segments. These are great investments that often we shy away from investing in, but they can make you money when you do it right.
You know, Sherry, I've been involved in a lot of different not-for-profit groups, and a lot of times people say, well, you know what, though I have someone on my board whose professional job is being a copywriter, or they're an accountant on the side. And you know what, I think that one of the things, and you sort of talk about this here in the pitfalls, but when someone is volunteering for you, they may not put you at the same level of priority when they're getting paid to do the job. And it isn't anything to take away from them and their professionalism, but the reality is that if I have a job I'm being paid for versus the job that I'm volunteering for, I'm putting the paid job ahead of that. And so sometimes I think it is really important for a not-for-profit organization to look and say, hey, can we pay you to do this so that we get your attention and priority? Or if not, because it's a conflict of interest, could you recommend someone that we could pay to do it so that you're using people in the best way possible? And maybe that person who is the expert can manage that process with the paid professional and keep on top of them, but you're not necessarily being the second choice.
I 100% agree. Couldn't have said it better. And it's never a matter of are they doing quality work, do they have the qualifications. Oftentimes they do, but if we go back to being proactive and growing your business based upon timing, and it's the end of the month, time to close the books. If the bookkeeper's a volunteer and it's tax season, it's going to get pushed out. And you cannot run your business that way. You cannot grow your business that way. Those are hard, sometimes, conversations to have. But I think if you really come at it from a place of just truth and saying, I'm trying to grow my business, can you come alongside someone who we can bring on? It's time for that. Invest in tools that help you work smarter. I mean, sometimes this is as simple as getting your books into QuickBooks, or
sometimes it's as simple as which fundraising tool are you picking, because there's a lot of great options out there for causes to fundraise. I will say that one of the things when I talk one-on-one with a cause that they're often surprised about is that iGive lets you download a spreadsheet of the donors who have given you money in the past, who are supporting your cause through their online shopping. It also has a dashboard, and we'll talk about this probably more later in the thank you, but where you can thank people. So we believe that we are a tool that is responsive to the needs of a not-for-profit, whereas other ones you might have to be keeping paper lists of, like, who bought chocolate this week. And not that the chocolate fundraiser isn't a great fundraiser. It is a great fundraiser, but if you're looking to work smarter, you may want to choose a fundraising tool that helps provide you with some of that information that you need.
That's great. And that was one of the first questions I asked you when I said, is the person managing able to download the donors? That is so critical. You have to know who was interested in your organization, and you need to get them over into your other tools so that you can bring them into other areas. It's a huge asset that iGive is providing you. And lastly, I'll just make a comment that's, I'm going to go past this fast, but it's a pretty, probably, we can spend the whole time on this, but I would encourage you, if you are growing your organization or hoping to take it to the next level, don't be so afraid of these, admin and fundraising percentages that really do drive us as nonprofit professionals. There are going to be years when your percentages are just not where you want them to be. Don't have a panic attack about it. If you can sit in front of a donor and tell them why maybe you had to spend more money on admin this year to grow, I would be so receptive to that, because I'd say, what, that is a smart person running a business, and they are going to impact more people's lives that way. So be confident enough to say, you know what, this year we did this, next year we're going to do this, but the reason is X, Y, Z. So don't let that be handcuffs on you growing your business. Okay, the infamous functional board of directors. This is another topic we could talk about all night, but I'm just going to tell you one thing I always suggest to people who maybe are trying to fill some seats on their board, or maybe shake it up a little bit and have that ability to do that. Do you have a functional board? I always suggest when people are saying, hey, gosh, if our board was this, we could only be this. I will always ask, how did the board members come to be? My suggestion would be to create ideal profiles of the types of people you want on the board. Don't start with, oh, we should get John, we should get Sarah, we should get Kathleen. What are these profiles of people that would be the makeup of the board that would support the organization the best? I did a cut and paste really fast from an organization I'm working with who has a medical mission. And so these are the types of things. They already had a few board members on, but we really sat down and said, you know what, we do need additional financial support. We need somebody who can give oversight and support to the ED who might not have a background in finance. We need everyone, these connectors to wealth or influencers, PR, international NGO business and law. And lastly, they said, hey, we got to start a research arm of what we're doing, and we're going to need some expertise in that area. Figure out who you're looking for, then create the job descriptions. I'll kind of loosely call it job descriptions to say, what does that person's role look like? Board membership is all expectations. Well, the board isn't doing what I thought they should do. And you need to be upfront and say, these are the expectations we have before they agree to serve and give their time. At that point, then you can start putting John and Susan and Kathleen's name on this. Those might be the same people, but this allows you to go out to your circle and say, hey, we're really looking for someone who has expertise in medical research, who has X, Y, Z, and might have a heart for, Uganda, whatever it is. You are going to find much more pinpointed passionate people if you're able to describe the type of person who can really support you in that role. So pitfalls, expectations, I already said that. Not managing up. You've got to tell your board members what you need from them. Yes, they may have, if you followed all these instructions, yes, they may have read the job description. Yes, they may have said, I am on board with you 110%. You've got to continually manage and say, hey, you know what? I'm looking for this type of donor, or I'm looking for this type of service, or do you know anyone who has expertise in this area? You've got to keep telling your board members what you need. Stick to your term limits. It's always good to have fresh people in and out. You don't want to get into a position where it's awkward and you are trying to figure out how to bring this up 6 years into someone's term, and you really want them to step off. So just stick to your term limits. I'll just say that every board member needs to be giving.
I agree with that, Sherry, but I think that sometimes one of the important things to remember is that sometimes you're bringing someone to your board because they have a different level of ability, because they have a great skill set that is going to do something. And I will say that, again, in my interactions with some of the causes that work with iGive is a great way to solve that problem. Because maybe I'm a great board member and I can bring a lot because I have a lot of context and I'm really good with social media and I can do a lot, but I don't have a lot of spare cash. You can look at that board member and say, we get that, but you shop. So shop online and use iGive, and we can track that you're making a donation, and we can then say that we have 100% donations from our board members. And sometimes it's not the actual dollar amount or how it came. And the reality is that the beauty of iGive is that someone's shopping online and paying the same amount that they would already pay. So someone who's on a more limited budget, but who really can give something to your organization, can still be giving back because they're utilizing the iGive system and the iGive portal and shopping at stores, buying things they were already going to buy, but giving a donation back to their cause. And it can sometimes be a significant donation depending on how much they are shopping online. So that is a way to hold someone accountable and say, look, we know you may not have a lot of extra cash, but here's a way that you can still be a giver to us and participate.
They may have a huge voice or huge following, and because they are so passionate about the cause. Totally agree. The board giving, in my opinion, it's not, okay, everyone needs to write a $5,000 check. If you have board members on the board who can, you need to treat them like an individual major donor, solicit them, and get their gift. If you have people, as an example, for this previous medical organization, it might be a nurse who's starting out who maybe has spent time on the field at your organization, and everyone has followed him or her on their trip, and what a voice that they can be by promoting iGive and be using that. That's a perfect example of just kind of matching your board member to their giving ability. Okay, number 5, we've hit our last one here. That's kind of a big one, or a super, super important one. And honestly, it's really where most of my work comes into place with donors or with organizations. Donors are not one size fits all. Of course they're not. You have all sorts of people giving to your organization. They might be major donors that we've talked about. They may be foundations, events, through events, businesses, grassroots, plan giving, iGive, places of worship, all sorts of things. You have got to be in tune to each one of these donor segments, which is what I call them, and really understand what each one of these groups needs from your organization. It's very different across the board. You've got to plan what that experience is that each one of these groups are having with your organization. So I would really encourage people to be reflective and sit back and say, gosh, we started, it was kind of all of our friends giving, but it's grown into this big thing, and we really should be segmenting and treating these groups a little more different. We shouldn't be just blasting everybody with the same newsletter. How can we put a strategy in place to really be meeting their needs? If you just think of an example, of course, a foundation, what they value from you. They may be giving you funding because some really unique mission you have is meeting their criteria of funding. It may be very different from a grassroots, like a fraternity or sorority group who wants to do a small fundraiser or said, hey, let's all get together and let's do an iGive program.
I used to work for a not-for-profit, and the not-for-profit was a disease. And so it had family members who were really interested in Just Giving because it had an emotional connection. They also had some of these family members create events. And so they'd have a run or a golf outing. So then there were people that were coming to the organization because of that. Then there were big foundations out there that were giving grants for research, and the way that the organization presented to them had to be very different than to the person who showed up at a run because they knew whose son had this disease. So I think that what you're saying is really critical, and if you don't take a look at what that individual needs and how you communicate with them, it's going to be irrelevant. Sending a big foundation an email that says shop with iGive, they're going to kind of look at you and go, why?
I agree. So each one of these areas, which we could spend time on, but particularly what experience are each one of these groups getting from you, from a messaging perspective, from a solicitation perspective? Each group needs to be asked differently. I kind of jokingly made the example of you wouldn't go on social media and post and say, hey, we're looking for a $50,000 donor today. Email us. You would never solicit on social media that way. You would go solicit a major donor specifically and tell them what an impact in the $50,000 gift would make. So it's a silly example, but it really helps us be more sensitive, I think, to what each group needs. Now, one area that I'm going to just focus on as we wrap this up is thanking. And so you've done in a perfect world, you provide strategy in place, you provided this amazing donor experience, you've messaged them what they need to hear, you've solicited them, you've told them what the gift impact will be, and then you get the gift, and then what happened? I see the ball drop quite a bit in this area. I also see some really amazing thanking happening. So kudos to groups that are really taking the time to do that. I'm going to go back to my Excel spreadsheet and just talk briefly and say, you've got to put a plan in place. So this is a really detailed and granular plan here. But you need to sit with your team, and whoever is responsible for thanking, the board will be involved in some elements of this. And literally put a plan in place to say, okay, how are all the ways funds are received through our organization? We receive a check in the post office. We get a gift online. We get gifts from foundations. We get gifts through iGive. What are all these ways? The minute a gift hits your office, you need to know what those steps are. Some of them are automatic through your database and your system you're using. Many times they're not. For example, this is it. When checks come to your post office, this organization knows that if it is a new $10,000 and above gift, there's a manual entry process. It's run in a report on Tuesdays. Their development person is going to phone that donor within 24 hours to say, oh my goodness. My name is Christine. We got your gift. We wanted to do a research to answer some questions, how did you hear about us, whatever it is. It may be somebody you solicited. In that case, the development person needs to be told. There's a typed letter acknowledgement, and then there may be a handwritten note from a board member. So whatever it is, whatever is appropriate, whatever manpower you have, get a plan in place. Do not drop the ball. Many times I see that large gifts come in and it takes a month to get a thank you note out in the mail or to acknowledge the gift, or sometimes not at all, which is devastating. This is all about donor retention.
One of the things I want to jump in and say is that if you do use iGive, the cause administrator go into the cause dashboard, and every month it will show you who contributed to this month's check.
And there's even a template there that says, here, copy and paste it. These are the email addresses, and this is something you can say to say thank you.
We do try and make it very easy for you. But even if you're not necessarily using iGive on a monthly basis, feel free to borrow our information because we want to see our causes be successful. So it gives you simple language. It tells you here's how to say thank you. These are more for smaller donors than the larger donors. And again, Sherry said, you have to treat them differently. But it's a nice thing to know that when your cause administrator gets the announcement that your cause is getting checked, they can jump online and see exactly who those people are that contributed to that check, so you can shoot a thank you note out.
That's
Sherry? No? That's... Ooh.
We're going to mute ourselves so that Rob can ask a question. Okay, we're all muted.
So I'm going to interrupt you because we have a couple of questions.
good.
And some of them are very nuts and bolts, and I'm not a nonprofit guy, so I may be misinterpreting this, but Amy asks, is there a good number of board meetings to schedule in a year?
It's a good question, Amy. First, I would say, what do your bylaws say? Your bylaws probably state there's X amount of board meetings per year. I would encourage them to have that in there. But you know what, I would say most often I see quarterly meetings happening. Usually that allows enough time to collaborate. It allows year-end recap. It allows looking at next year's budget. And then there might be the occasional conference call for an urgent issue during the month that, you know, or the off times that they want to call in. But I would say most often I see quarterly, but your bylaws probably already dictate this.
So a follow-on question from Cynthia is, what's your best advice for finding new board members?
That's a good one, Cynthia. My best advice, other than what I've outlined, and really to be seeking for the right fit and the right experience versus a friend of a friend of a friend, it's kind of like, you know, like how we get to know a major donor. You know, it's everywhere we go saying, hey, this is the type of, on the donor side, this is the types of gifts we're looking for. We're looking for people who can write checks of this size. On the board member side, you know, I'm looking for people who would have a heart for XYZ, who have experience in this. It comes down to networking. It really does. It comes down to every day waking up and working it into your conversation with those people who are around you.
You know, Sherry, the other thing I would add is use LinkedIn, because I have gotten requests on my LinkedIn profile from people I didn't know that said, hey, we see you have some of these experiences with not-for-profits, and you say on your LinkedIn profile you're interested in supporting not-for-profits, and your skill set matches what we're looking for. So I might not be available for that cause to help them at that time, but then I can say, you know what, though, I know someone else who might, and that, so it really is all about that networking, and people think of LinkedIn only as business or jobs, but LinkedIn can really help not-for-profits and help people find skills. If you've done the homework in advance to know what the skills you're looking for, then you can look for those skills on LinkedIn and then connect with those people.
So here's another either-or kind of a question from Meredith. When you're talking about planning, is it only about money, or is it also about, or only about, getting people to join in?
Planning.
Well, you guys about planning, so
I think we're talking about gift processing and planning that we've been talking about lately. I think that's what she's referring to. I think that you could probably take some of these same concepts and apply them. I think that, you know, what we were talking about today was fundraising, and so that was Sherry's focus.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I'm a planner, I'm a person who analyzes metrics. That is what's going to take your organization to the next level. That's how great businesses are run. You know, I sometimes say, we got to stop just crossing our fingers and, well, let's try it. but like look what others have done. Go talk to other business leaders, other nonprofit business leaders. Say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. Have you done anything like that? And then ask them how they implemented it. Put that plan in place and be flexible. You may have to tweak your plan, you know, along the way and say, hey, I thought this was going to go twice as fast as this, and it's really slow. So be flexible to change it. But I guess that's maybe the tone of this whole webinar, is that you have to dive deeper and be better planners and be better organizers of your business to grow.
So Yehuda asks a deeper question. First, I just want to give a shout out to Yehuda, who's been out there doing quality assurance for us. So thank you, Yehuda. He asks, says, ours is a religious organization, and like most, we are experiencing a flight away from institutions. We are unusual in many ways. Consequently, we have difficulty drawing in new members, especially ones who can support us financially. How do we gain a wider, wealthier membership? It's a tough question.
That is a tough question. You know, there are a lot. I've been seeing a lot of donor management softwares that have started integrating some of these prospecting tools that are honestly getting quite robust. And so what they'll allow you to do is really do a sampling of your existing database. You may have people in your current database who might be giving at a small level and actually have the ability and the capacity to be giving in a greater level. So I would say, number one, start with who you already have. And these kind of wealth indicators and the data is actually quite interesting. So look and see if your software you're using, or even sometimes they'll have partnering organizations that can really run those reports pretty easily and pretty cost effective, you know, with just all the data that we have access to. And unfortunately, it really does come down to networking. And, you know, I'll even, as my business, I'll say, you know, I need to tell people what I need. You know, what types of clients do I need? You've got to, there has to be people in your organization who are waking up every morning, and it is their job to find the new followers, find the new members, find the new donors. Someone has to be living, breathing, and eating that.
You know what? I'm also a part of a religious organization that has struggled with membership, and I think that one of the most important things that we did was some of the stuff you talked about at the very beginning, Sherry, which was really knowing who we are and being clear about messaging who we are, because I think that it's very hard to encourage people to join you in a mission, join you in a path, if you're not clear about what you're offering them. And so just to say, I'm this religious organization, sometimes isn't enough. Sometimes you really need to be specific about these are the unique value propositions that our community is offering. And I think that sometimes religious institutions shy away from thinking themselves as businesses. And I'm not saying that you want to lose the heart of who you are as an organization, but having that sense of this is who we are as a business and this is what we're marketing towards, so that you know how to outreach to people, can really be critical. And along the lines of how do we gain a wider, wealthier membership, well, sometimes wealthier is important, but sometimes gaining a wider membership that is just consistent givers can actually give you the right funding. And if you follow Sherry's plan about tracking and monitoring and knowing where your money comes from, it might be valuable that you have a lot of people who are all giving a little bit of money as opposed to a few people giving a lot of money.
Because you do want it balanced. You never want to be 90% of your gifts coming from 20 people, or you want to keep this balance. You want your $25 donors growing, you want your $1,000 donors growing, your $5, all of these different areas, putting strategies in place so they are all growing, and it will support you in the dips and the highs and the lows.
So we have one more question from Mary, which is the opposite side of all of these. And Mary asks, as a person who is starting alone, is it a good idea to consider doing a fundraiser with a company like Mary Kay or Avon to meet people, get my info, the organization out there? She's looking for ideas as to how to get started.
You know, I think that those organizations are great, but a lot of times the people who are coming to your Mary Kay or your Avon party are coming for other reasons and not necessarily to know about your organization. I would say that your best strength is utilizing your social networks and utilizing social media. iGive does another webinar that you can look at that's all about social media, but really that old adage of, and she told two friends, and she told two friends, and so on, is probably one of the strongest ways for a not-for-profit to grow initially. And to be able to give people an opportunity to give and support your cause without it costing them anything extra, without them feeling pressured to have to buy something because you invited them somewhere, is a delicate balance. And so I would say that use your connections, use your email list, use your social media and say, this is something that's important to me, this is why it's important to me, and do you know other people that I might connect with that would match this interest? Because again, that is going to help you find people who are more likely to support what you are doing.
Fundraising is investing in deep relationships. It's, yes, there's a transaction happening, but take the transactional element out of it, invest deeply in the relationships of your donors across the board, and that will ensure your growth.
So now back to our regularly scheduled program.
And we are wrapping up here, but thanks for those. Those are great questions. I'm glad we kind of popped those in the middle. So we've really kind of talked about a lot of these pitfalls, but I'll touch on the third one. Your donors need to be asked. They need to be solicited. You cannot just hope that that person who you know has the ability and might be writing a check to another organization in the same community. You cannot just hope that they're going to write the same check to you. You must put your plan in place, go tell them what their gift can do, and solicit them for a gift. Be intentional. And then I think I've talked enough about the thanking plan. So just as a wrap up, I would just encourage everybody to, sit down at their desk tomorrow morning and really go through and think about the type of experience you are giving to each one of your donors or donor segments. And whether it's, you call this news management or relationship building, whatever it is a long-term investment with your donors. These are relationships you're investing in that is going to push your mission to the next level. This is just a path of alignment. Are we going and meeting with donors or talking to people who really are, they really understand our mission, they could get behind this, that they trust us, connecting, forming bonds with donors? Have we answered every question they have that would keep them from giving their best gift? I'll often say, go into this meeting, don't do any asks, just figure out what they're nervous about before they would write the check. That's your one job in this meeting. Well, they brought up this interesting thing. It's like that is the hang up. We're not going to get the best gift because of that. Then you need to ask them for that gift. If you've done all of your work, and sometimes, honestly, people say, how long does this take? It might take 1 month. It might take 2 years. It depends on the donor. If you're tuned into each one of your donors, you will know when you need to make the ask and when they'll be able to make, which is called your quality decision, but really it's like, yes, I am going to invest in your organization. And then the key is that response, which we've talked about. That's thanking, that's beyond thanking. It's how are you going to exceed that donor's expectations when they make that gift? How are you going to knock their socks off when you get back to them and say, hey, I just wanted to meet with you today to share with you what your gift did to our organization.
That's great. So now is our chance for a little bit more Q&A. It's sort of our last call for questions. And while we're waiting for the last call for questions, I just want to remind everyone that the webinar will be posted at support.igive.com. Just search for Webinar Archive. We will also be sending out copies to everyone who attended. And finally, I really want to thank Sherry QuamTaylor. And if you have more specific questions about iGive, you can always go to support.igive.com and enter a ticket. Or if you have some questions about what Sherry's spoken about tonight, feel free to email her directly at sherry@quamtaylor.com. Or again, if you put ticket in at support.igive.com as it relates to the webinar tonight. We will, of course, forward that on to Sherry. So we'll just wait for one more second to see if anybody has any other questions. But Sherry, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And Rob, thank you for being the host with the most. And we thank you all for joining us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at further iGive webinars. If you have thoughts about this webinar, this was a slightly new format for us, please shoot us a note and let us know what you thought. We always want to hear from you.